Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another book review from the Spinetinglers book series, and it's book number 9, Step on a Crack. This book, I don't think I ever got around to reading as a kid. I know my buddy Monster Blood read it recently and said that he really enjoyed it and wanted me to read it, so I took this book on vacation with me because I was craving a Spinetinglers book. You know, I've been reviewing these books for quite a while. I think I'm a third of the way through now. And I was shocked by some of the stuff that was included in this book. Truthfully. So yeah. In case you don't know about the Spinetinglers series, as you can see, the name on the cover says MT Coffin. And that's a surname trying to hint at something like an empty coffin. And this book series is 30 books, and it's all ghost written. And this book specifically is written by an author named C.J. Henderson. I haven't been able to find much on this person, but I have to say, this is one of the better written Spinetinglers books I found in the series. I think in terms of consistency and like tone of writing, when you're dealing with a ghost written series, sometimes you'll get a book that just has bad writing to it. And it's no different in this series. You'll have like jumpiness and the plot progression, or just really flat ideas, or maybe it's very dialogue and exposition heavy and not enough action. Maybe the style of writing, the way they write third person is kind of, I don't know, stiff. You know, there's a lot of things, you know, that you can find in many ghost written series. But for here, I think for this story being a third-person story, it was very riveting, very impactful. I think it was one of the more unique ideas I've seen done in kids' horror. And I highly recommend it. If you haven't tried Spinetinglers before, I can see you getting hooked on the series after reading this. This would be a great starting place for you if you haven't tried the series. Really, go out and try this book. It's great. So, let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So, this book starts off with a prologue, and to my memory, I don't remember many Spinetinglers books doing this, but this prologue has to be one of the most brutal and violent things I've ever read in a kid's horror book. Like, truthfully, there's blood, there's, you know, death, graphic deaths at that. It's just so good to start off a book. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite things I have read in this series so far in terms of like openings and stuff. So it takes place a few hundred years in the past. This book I think was written in 96, maybe 97. So like 300, 400 years in the past. Maybe even farther than that. I can't really remember. But it takes place in North America. And there's this tribe of Native Americans who are living in this valley. You know, I think they mentioned that it might be nearby the Rocky Mountains or something. I can't really remember the full details. It might be the Appalachians. But anyways, they live in this valley area. And there's this being that lives in the valley, lives underground. And they call this being Red Manachu. And he's essentially a purveyor of death. Whenever the tribe gets near a crack in the earth, this thing comes out and tries to eat them. And the prologue essentially sets up Red Manachu, who's the main villain of the story, and he is brutally killing some Native Americans, and they end up fleeing up to the mountains, and apparently this Red Manachu being cannot travel up the mountains. He can only come out through the cracks of the earth. And they leave him there to essentially get weakened and hopefully die. And it's pretty brutal, y'all. I mean, this prologue, prepare yourselves, especially if you're not used to something this speed, it might get to you a little bit. But that's essentially where the prologue ends. And the story kicks on in present day. There's this group of kids, and the main character is Billy. And Billy is this guy, he's not really all that popular, but he's not really, you know, unpopular. People tend to like him. He has, like I said, a lot of friends. And he and his friends are walking to school one day, and there's some tremors going on underneath the town, and this town is revealed later on to be built in the valley where this prologue took place. And just somehow one day, these tremors start happening. And throughout the story, Billy catches on that there's these tremors. He looks at the grass and he sees the grass is like moving up and down. He feels vibrations. There's a certain odor in the air that smells like burning rubber or sulfur. And he can kind of hear something, but he can't really make out what it is coming from the earth. But when he tries to tell people, they don't really believe him, right? So Billy understands how crazy it all sounds and kind of files it back. But there comes a point in the story where he's going over to his friend's house one day, and he's outside, and there's been this weird occurrences happening, and he can't really shake it from his brain. Like, what's that smell? What's this noise I think I'm hearing? And he sees his friend's dog get brutally killed in his friend's backyard, and he lets out this blood-curdling scream. And everybody in the neighborhood sees this and witnesses this, and they think he's gone crazy, right? And it cuts to him having conflict with his mother and father about what he saw, and he's, tried telling the story. Everybody thinks he's crazy, so now he's like, what happened to me, I think, as the author is trying to hint at, is that he was traumatized, and now the town thinks that he might be kind of crazy, right? So Billy is now in a predicament where he knows nobody's going to believe him. Everybody thinks he's crazy. And he has to deal with this thing that he's witnessed, all right? And since nobody believes him, he has to pretty much hold this secret in. And he kind of confides into his friends, who all believe that, what everybody else thinks, that he's kind of crazy. But he does break through to his teacher, and his teacher tells him that it might be a good idea for him to go research something, at the library, and try to find, what he thinks he might be smelling, and maybe come up with a logical conclusion of what he's come to maybe ease his mind and maybe go back to normal. Maybe through research, it might help him kind of cope with what happened. So Billy takes the idea and runs with it, but he knows what he saw. He's seen it, and he goes to the library, and he tries to find history based around the town. He's like, he can't find anything, any book on what he witnessed, but he finds a town record that reveals the legend about Red Monachu, and he's like, this is definitely what it is. The signs, there's a smell involved. It comes out from the earth, pretty much like sucks things down into the earth, and it's very bloody, and there's noises where the people said that they can see the grass moving up and down and hear noises coming from the earth. It just matches up perfectly. So he's now found what this thing is, and now feels like if he goes around and tells people, hey, look, this Red Monachu legend from the Native Americans that used to live here before, we colonized this area, said that this was a thing, and now it's come back to surface, and there's something that we can't ignore. We got to handle it, right? So Billy tries to get that across, and people are like, oh, you really believe in, old urban folk legends and stuff? And Billy's like, okay, I guess people won't believe me now either. And he's at church one day, and he sees a crack on the sidewalk, and he smells the smell. He sees the signs, almost kind of like a premonition, and he sees an older gentleman die, like in front of everyone. And everybody then starts to think, well, maybe there might be some type of merit to what Billy's been saying. And some people even cast the finger at Billy, saying that, he might be the cause of all this. Well, Billy is just sitting back, not saying a word. And, when his parents ask him, he's like, look, I've already told you the story. You guys won't believe me. And his parents pretty much have gone to the conclusion that they need to, send him away. and sending him away from the town might be good for him because of the episode that happened at his friend's house, and now he's pretty much made the town go crazy. Maybe he's kind of poisoning the town a little bit. And Billy doesn't want to move away. He doesn't want to lose his friends. He just wants this thing to be resolved, right? So he starts to try to find a way to get rid of Red Monachu, and he thinks back to the legend and how they ran to the mountains and tried to starve him, essentially try to starve him and wait him out. Well, unfortunately for the Native Americans, they did not survive. They eventually died out due to the conditions of the area. And I want to say through Red Monachu, I think the book just said that they died from elements and stuff. But he still took that idea and wanted to run with it. Well, there comes a point near the end of the book where he's now in the car with his mom, and they're talking after the event. There was another event that happened that kind of spooked the town a little bit. I don't want to spoil what it is. But him and his mom are in a car, and there's a crack in the road that kind of splits open and starts growing. And there's a point in the book where Billy starts to have these psychic vision connections with Red Monachu, and he can hear the voice coming from the earth talking to him, saying that, hey, in Red Monachu, you actually get some like monologue with the villain, and he's saying that, I know that you are the leader. He seems to think that Billy's the leader of all these people, and he says, I'm gonna take everybody's soul around you to punish you, and you're gonna be the last one I take. I'm gonna make you suffer. And like, he wants to come after Billy because there's a psychic connection, and Red Monachu can read his thoughts, and he knows that Billy is the only one that can really stop him because he's the only person that knows that he exists. And Red Monachu is revealed to be like this being that has been around since the beginning of time. Since like he's like billions of years old. And he goes from planet to planet, destroying every planet that has life. And he sits there under the earth or the soils of these planets waiting, and one by one by one, he just takes all the life essence out of all the living things on the planet until it's all gone, and then he moves on to the next planet. And he needs to do this because he stores up energy from eating all the life, and then he uses that energy to take him to the next planet, and then by the time he gets there, he needs to go back under the earth and rest to feed again, and then do the same thing over and over and over again. Well, when Billy's in his car, he hears Red Monachu talking to him. He smells the smell, and he tries to tell his mom, look, this thing is here, we need to go now. And there's a whole scene where they try to escape in the car, but the pothole has been growing in the road, and there's a really grisly call that they managed to get themselves out of, and they manage to escape the pothole, and Billy just floors the gas and gets them out of sight. Now his mom starts to see that Billy might be telling the truth, and everybody starts to warm up to Billy and asking Billy what to do. And he's like, well, the only thing we can do is stop Red Monachu. And his teacher, who tried to help him early on in the story, went back over his, I guess, sources, because it was part of an assignment where he wanted him to kind of use the assignment to get kind of, over what he thought he saw. But the teacher went and saw what he checked out and read it, and through all these experiences he's experienced by being just a town resident, he now seems to believe Billy. And now the teacher and Billy are the two people that know specifically about Red Monachu. And there's this whole final act where Billy and the teacher, they're heading to a section in the town where they think they can locate Red Monachu and try to draw him out, maybe to plead with the town residents to escape to the mountains and just wait this thing out. But when they're in the car, something happens. Red Monachu starts to chase. He's gotten some energy. He's presumably killed a few living things in the area. And there's this whole thing where he's like fissuring the soil underneath the car, chasing the car, knocking the car, causing explosions and stuff. And Billy manages to escape, but his teacher looks like he's gotten swallowed up into the earth inside of the car, and Billy's freaked out, and Red Monachu is beelining to get to him. And there's this whole scene where he has to escape on a crane, where this construction's been going on the street where they were driving. And there's this whole thing where Red Monachu's trying to swallow up the crane, and Billy's presumed like he's going to get, eaten. But something happens, I'm not going to spoil what it is, that ends up preventing Billy from, getting eaten. And something may happen to the situation where he gets out and Red Monachu essentially gets stopped. He's... I don't want to spoil it, but there might be a hint that there might be some finality by the very end of the book, and I'll leave it at that. So that is Step on a Crack. Sorry, the review seems kind of messy. I read it about a week ago, and I'm trying to do a review off the top of my head, but this book, y'all, was such a fun little ride. When we're talking about the uniqueness to it, the closest thing I can think of to this concept is maybe Stephen King's It, or maybe Kid Buu from Dragon Ball Z, right? You have this being like Kid Buu or It that is a celestial creature that's been around since the beginning of time, or at least the beginning of the universe, and they travel from planet to planet, destroying the planets, essentially. Maybe kind of like a Galactus type as well. But this character here, what he is never really explained, but he's not really a physical form. He's more of like an energy presence, and you can't really destroy it. The only way you can defeat energy is by depleting it and just letting it run dry. And that may or may not happen in the story, but Red Monachu, man, is a frightening villain. I mean, he is a cold-blooded killer. I mean, he's going around hunting people, hunting living things to suck their souls. There's blood, gore. He's very methodic. He likes to play mind games with Billy. When he starts communicating with Billy in the book, it's very tense. And you get this monologue with the character. Since the book's written in third person, the author is able to go more into the villain. And his origin is so fun. I would love to see this character or this concept done again in kids horror. I mean, this is one that I actually think would be great as like if R.L. Stine took this idea and ran with it, added better prouse, maybe a better characterization, and a better writing style. This would have been a shoo-in in the Goosebumps series, and I think this would have been a fan favorite book, truthfully. The concept alone is fantastic. Billy is a positive here. Since the story is written in third person, you're not going to be able to get a monologue here, but Billy is a very proactive character. It does kind of lean into the you gotta believe me with him, but it does retract that a little bit because he's so determined to save everyone, and he's almost selfless, if I'm being honest. He's willing to put himself in the line of fire to save everybody in the town, which I think is very noble of him. He's very mature for his age, very heroic, and all around great character. The atmosphere in the story, there's this urban legend to it that really sinks in, and I think that there's this foreboding feeling. After reading the prologue, the situation all these characters are in moving forward after that, and you're expecting to see something really bad come out of it. And I think the final act, where it gets near the end portion of the book, it gets really good. And the middle is kind of like a slow burn to that, but that tension, knowing what this thing is capable of, it's fantastic in a lot of ways. And I have to give it a lot of praise for it, for being so effective. Yeah, but I do have some negatives with it. One of my negatives really stems from the middle portion of the book. It is one of those slow burn stories, and it requires Billy to have to go throughout multiple stages of the story. This is like a I think like almost 140-page book. Might be even a little bit longer than that. I know it's pretty long, but for the middle portion, Billy is, I want to say, going into the "You Gotta Believe Me" a lot, because he does do it and he does retract from it and then starts to do like independent research and things. But it almost feels like inverted "You Gotta Believe Me," where it's been so much focus on him just researching things. Not a lot of things are happening. There are some spurts where, like the church scene where he sees the guy die on the crack, and there are some things dealing with, him trying to plead with his friends, and, there's some emotions there when his family's telling him that they might have to send him away, building that, I guess, all or nothing situation for Billy, like either stop Red Monachu, or he's just going to keep coming after people, and even if he doesn't make it to everyone, he's probably going to get sent away out of the town before he can even stop them. So I get the emotion building there, but it just feels really repetitive. Like there's a couple of scenes where he's talking to the teacher, going to do research, and he's talking like in his mind about what he thinks this thing is or what he should do about it, and there's like 3 different points in the middle act where he's essentially coming to the same conclusion over and over and over again before actually acting on these impulses. And it kind of it comes across like padding in the story. You don't need that many times going to the library, going to have this conversation with your teacher and your parents, and having the same conclusions done. I feel like you can start from wherever you want to start with the library, then move on to the teacher and the parents, and not sit back with this conclusion with Billy and just have more action, and him maybe going to try to find Red Monachu in the cracks somewhere, or maybe devise a plan to get everybody in one location to experience what he's been experiencing. A little bit of missed opportunities in the middle portion, and then the ending, I want to say, is a negative outright. But the very last chapter, to me, when we're dealing with there's like a sense of absolution in terms of story with Red Monachu, right? And I feel like that ending is kind of unrealistic, because he did this, in the prologue. And yeah, the people got away and he went dormant for a while. But in the ending of this book, he got some people. He was able to succeed. He got some energy and stuff. But the ending implies that something, like I said, absolute has happened to Red Monachu. And I don't know if I'd buy that. I'm like, really, this thing is like billions of years old, and all of a sudden now it gets stopped, seemingly, for now, maybe? I guess the ending, I don't want to spoil it, but there is definitely a sense of death involved. Kind of loose, but you'll see what I'm talking about if you read the book. And like I said, I just don't buy if that's the case. It just seems like it's an ending that the author wanted to add on just to say, hey, look, we got a happy ending here. And in some Spinetinglers books, that's the case. Some of the endings, they end on a happy note or try to aim for that happy note, like kumbaya type of moment. Here, the believability is just not there. But other than those things, one last negative would be, I guess, I don't know how to put this, the tonal consistency. I think the prologue starts it off very hit the ground running. There's a lot of action, gore, carnage, almost, for a kid's book. And when you go from that, and then you go to this slow burn middle portion until the final act, the tone has gone from this killer entity to now this nobody's gonna believe me kid setup, and it doesn't really carry that action in that middle portion all the way through. The tone goes from, oh, this is going to be a fun, slasher ambiance type of story almost. And then it goes into like this mystery of what this thing is, and nobody knows what it is because it was so long ago, and this was before, colonizers ended up in this area, and it gets drawn out until the final act, and then everybody starts to catch on, hey, this thing might actually be real. I wish the villain itself, was there doing things from the beginning of the middle portion of the story. It feels like some chapters just take forever building exposition, building... I don't know what he's even trying to build. It's just there to buy the time to get to the final act. And it causes like a tonal consistency. It's just, it starts you off really quick with a bang, and then it kind of fizzles. And that bums me out. But from a 0 to 5 star basis, this was a very exceptional book. I don't think it quite hits that A tier status for me for these Spinetinglers books. Like, I really love Wear and Scare, The Monster Channel, Killer Computer, Snow Day. Those books are great. This is more of like a B tier, kind of similar in vein with like The Dead Kid Did It or Camp Crocodile. But it's still a fun one. So from a 0 to 5 star basis, I'd probably give this book about a 4.3 out of 5. This is a high B, but I love the concept behind this. I love the gore and the brutality. And all the moments it does have going for it with like the action and the suspense and the tension really do work. And yeah. Its relatability to Goosebumps, though, I don't think Scholastic would go with an idea like this to begin with, but I do think that if Stein was able to tweak some things, this could fit in. It's a little too graphic. I'd probably say this is probably like a 4 out of 5. It's a little too out there in some areas, but as is, it's very comparable. I think if you're a fan of Goosebumps, you really love this book in some ways. As a fun change-up. Like, there's some things that Goosebumps just can't bring to the table that some of these knockoffs can. And this is one I think people would really enjoy exploring. So yeah, that is my thoughts of Step on a Crack. Let me know down in the comment section. Do you love this? Do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.